So it has been a fun 7 days in the world of pro wrestling. And I'm lucky enough I get to discuss it all with a great friend of mine joining me on the hotline. He is the co-host for Rod Van Dam's podcast, which you can see on ad-free shows. He is Dominic DeAngelo. Dominic, how are you, man?
Stu, I'm great, man. It's always a pleasure to join you and discuss a little wrestling. It's what a week. What a wild week.
Yeah, it's funny for a week where we didn't have like any pay-per-views or anything, but still kind of a news-filled week. And before we get to it, something that has always kind of bothered me, and maybe it's just because I don't know. And this pertains to all the websites, whether it's Wrestling Observer, Fightful, Wrestling Inc., WrestleZone, you name it.
Right.
There are times now. Look, all of them do fantastic work, and they do, provide some great news items. But there are times, once in a while, you'll see something pop up, and it's on the most minuscule of details. And I'm going, why is this news? Do you ever feel like that sometimes? Like, you worked for Wrestling Inc. for a bit. Was there ever a time like you had something and it was like, I know I should write something about it, but it's not that big of a deal?
Right. So if you're looking for the news aspect of it all and what's going to catch some eyes and stuff like that, it's like, okay, I remember any of the several CM Punk incidences that went down. I was in the thick of on my news shift, and it's like anything you would cover, or you'd even try to parse apart what could each make a separate article in a lot of ways and stuff like that. But a lot of the stuff, to be honest, it's like, all right, this is not, in the grand scheme of it all, it's not really news. Like, it's going to be immediate. It's almost like fast food news, where it's like you consume it and it's gone and over. So like eating at a Chinese restaurant, you're still going to be hungry afterwards and stuff. And so you get that kind of aspect when it comes to that stuff. If I had my control of certain things at some points, so there would be times where I would be a little bit more selective of what to choose and what exactly you want to get out. Because I think in the grand scheme of things, it's a lot of what you can catch people looking at, not necessarily, to an extent, there might be some sites that get a little clickbaity or, anything like that. But it's a lot of, how many people you can get some eyes onto. And I understand that aspect of the game. But I also understand the aspect of, hey, what is actually news and what isn't? What is worth reporting and what isn't? A lot of it was like scuttlebutt, especially with the CM Punk situation, like him going to WWE or something like that. It was a lot of, hey, we got this word. We have a source that said something here and that said something here. And like, obviously you can write about it. Obviously people will probably read it because it's CM Punk. But is it, to your point, is it really news? Is it really in the grand scheme of it all?
Well, and obviously it's not. I mean, it happens throughout sports and even the real news world and all that good stuff. There's always something, there's always something that's like kind of like, why is that being reported? So I get it. So
I will say, let me say too, Stu.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the grand scheme, the landscape of wrestling journalism, and I've addressed this kind of before, and everybody learns, everybody grows and develops and kind of gets their cuts their teeth in certain ways. The wrestling journalism landscape, it's not, from working in sports and stuff like that, you guys, it's like very more professional.
Yes.
And not to say that we don't have some professional people in the wrestling journalism world, but there's a lot of people that are fans, and they go in there with the fan kind of aspect, and sometimes it's secondhand embarrassment. And I feel like a lot of these scrums that we have sometimes or anything like that, people will say some wild stuff and ask some wild questions, and it's just like, and you get that in sports once in a while too.
Oh yeah.
You'll get a mulligan, but it's like it happens a lot in wrestling, and we're such a new niche of a genre in a lot of ways when it comes to that I feel we're leaving a bad first impression a lot of the times, because it's like, if that makes sense, do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and I see it. And I've seen it. Like for instance, one of the big rules that I learned early on is there are no fans in the press box.
Right.
So if you're at an event, whether it's a Cowboys football game or whatever, there's no cheering. So you go to, say, WrestleMania, well, you hear cheering.
Yep.
And look, we're all fans. Yes, I covered the Cowboys. I've been a Cowboys fan all my life. But I knew to subdue that whenever I was in Arlington, in the press box, in a news conference, and there are ways to ask things. There are ways to get information without sounding like a homer or a fan. And it always just kind of grated me. And again, it happens in sports. In fact, I'll be honest, one of the crazier environments is soccer. So we have Austin FC from Major League Soccer here in Austin. In fact, the stadium's about 10 minutes from me. And so I would go and cover those games. Sure enough, there'd be cheering in the press box. And it would just I was doing everything I can to keep from standing up saying, okay, no fans in the press box. And then eventually, one of the quote credentialed media ended up being a guy from some fan site. And he would ask a question and he would keep saying we in reference to the team. And that's one of one of the very first things you learn. You are not on the team. It is not we. It is the Dallas Cowboys or the Texas Longhorns or Austin FC. And so now I was lucky enough, especially early in my career, I got to learn from some very accomplished journalists. Chip Brown, who worked at Associated Press, worked for Dallas Morning News, and has worked quite a bit on the Longhorn beat. Has been doing this for a long time. I got to work with him quite a bit, and so I learned a lot from him. And it's kind of the thing with wrestling. You're right in that for every one of us that we do carry that sports media, that sports media, mindset into pro wrestling. There are those that are fans and they don't realize that you are now a media member. You need to conduct yourself in a certain way. So,
hey, sometimes you see people show up in wrestling shirts. You see, and to your point, when we're in the press box, people are cheering. Certain aspects like that. And I did go to school for journalism, and I forgot a lot of stuff. I will admit that, because it was been many years since I've done it. But I also kind of recognize reading the room and understanding how to conduct yourself in certain ways. And it is a lot of the times when I see horrible questions get asked or people act a little too much like fans, it's just get a certain develop a certain decorum about yourself so that you can enjoy yourself. Obviously it is fun. It's wrestling, but it's you have to kind of handle yourself in a certain way if you want this to be taken seriously overall as a genre. I think
exactly. You got to conduct yourself in a certain way to be respected. And I was a big, that one, the rule about you don't wear again, if I go to a Cowboys game, I'm not wearing Cowboys gear.
You're not wearing a jersey.
No, I'm not. I'm not even wearing anything with the star on it.
No, yeah, right, exactly.
You're lucky if my shirt is blue or silver.
There you go.
That's just the thing. And even wrestling press boxes, I have never mind the fact that I don't want to wear wrestling, a wrestling t-shirt. I have Sports Guys Talking Wrestling polos that I wear for stuff like that. So And when I was still with radio, if it wasn't one of those, it was a horn polo. So yeah, I get it. So I want to start off with AEW. Saturday night, they had it was Samoa Joe defending the Ring of Honor World Television title against Willie Mack.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I have been a fan of Willie Mack for a very long time. Gotten to know him. He'd come to Austin quite a bit, wrestled for Wrestle Circus, and he's such a cool dude. And watching that match, it was a really good match. It was not, when you saw the matchup, look, you kind of figured Samoa Joe was going to retain, but it was a really good match, and it gave Willie Mack a platform to show off what he could do. And he's been doing this for quite some time. Of course, well known with Lucha Underground and NWA and such. But it was great to see Willie Mack get to show off and show out in the ring against Samoa Joe. Give me your thoughts on Willie Mack.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool that you actually bring him up. And I don't know, he did wrestle on Collision and everything like that, but like Willie Mack, I've said for years, like he's had several runs in Impact, I believe, as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always been adamant that he's somebody that should get a world title run in any promotion in a lot of ways, because he's got personality, he's got the athleticism to exude himself and to stand out in a lot of ways. He's also got he can cut a promo too in a lot of ways to be himself. It's very much, and him and Rob Van Dam are friends. And so I've talked to Rob about Willie Mack too. And he's got that kind of laid back, but ass kicking kind of mentality that Rob has in a lot of ways. And he's able to translate that over on television. And, he can get hard hitting, he can get, athletic and everything like that. And I did not see the match, but I can only imagine what a slugfest that was, because I love Samoa Joe too, and those guys can really complement one another. But Willie Mack, and to your point, anytime I've been at an MLW show or been at a certain venue that he's at, he always goes around and shakes everybody's hand and says hello to them and introduce just a very nice person and just a pro in a lot of ways. And it's it's cool he gets a chance to shine in AEW. I would certainly love it if they really just strapped a rocket to him in a lot of ways, because I think he's somebody that could stand out as a talent, because he's such a different personality and a different kind of athlete and a different physique too.
Absolutely. I saw him, I guess it'd be about a month and a half ago. I was in Las Vegas for Cauliflower Alley Club reunion, and he was there, and so we got to chit chat, and it was great to see him. He came over, gave me a hug, and we just catching up, how he's doing, all that good stuff. And I've always been such a big fan of his. So something else that happened on Collision. So you had Sky Blue challenging Chris Statlander for the TBS title.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got Sky Blue in kind of this attitude change that at least the commentators are attributing to getting misted by Julia Hart. And I'm wondering if now we're going to do this thing where everybody that gets misted by Julia Hart all of a sudden starts being surly. We even saw it with Willow Nightingale, and that breaks my heart, because one of the things I loved about seeing Willow Nightingale coming out is how bubbly she was, the smiles and everything. And to put that on her, I think it actually almost ruins Willow to an extent. I don't want to. I don't want to see everybody getting misted and all of a sudden turning surly. What do you think?
So yes, that's what really makes Willow stand out, as her personality. And you could see it with the crowd reaction too that she would get. She'd get that organic grassroots crowd reaction that is very rare to kind of attain in wrestling, and especially in today's modern wrestling too, and how AEW kind of books itself, where it's very quick and so many people on the roster and everything like that. She was somebody that stood out. So I do not think that's a good route for them to take in regards to that. Now if it's that aspect of the storytelling, I think, is kind of cool. If, hey, you're getting misted and something weird happens and you kind of something turns you a little bit, but it just do it very seldomly, because I mean, who did that to Julia Hart? Somebody.
It was Malachi.
Malachi. So Malachi.
Yeah. So Julia Hart was she was part of that Varsity Blondes trio.
Right.
We had the cheerleader persona, and then Malachi Black misted her, and then that's
so if you're gonna do that, pick somebody like a Sky Blue to maybe do that. She's a younger talent. She's up and coming. She does have a reaction, but not the type of babyface kind of reaction that a Willow Nightingale would have. So if you do that kind of thing, make it significant, make it matter, and just have it happen to one person, where almost Julia Hart's passing the torch, so to speak, by spitting in her face. Yeah. So I think it's a neat storytelling element, but make it mean something by having it happen on a very, very rare occasion with somebody, one person in specific, not everybody.
Well, and I would be selective on who you do that, and kind of base it on the reaction they get from the crowd. So, like you said, Willow Nightingale getting a very organic, very positive reaction from the crowd because of how positive she is. Don't do that to her. Let her be that. Don't try to. It feels like putting a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. So
yeah. Also too, Stu, it's like you're trying to find new women to kind of take up the mantle that you're losing with somebody like a Jade Cargill. Mm-hmm. And it's like, not necessarily that Willow Nightingale or Sky Blue look like Jade Cargill, but you're looking somebody to be their own person that stood out, somebody like a Jade Cargill has. And it's like your women's division gets criticized a lot as speaking as AEW, your division gets criticized a lot for, hey, where's the focus on a lot of the talent that comes in? Because it's like they only get a certain amount of time on there or whatever it is. And then it's you want to see a talent stand out and mean something. And you don't want to get them lost in the shuffle. So it's definitely something that Tony Khan and AEW has to consider a little bit more, I would think, when promoting them. It's because it's like, and you look at what they did on Raw this past Monday here with all the women that were getting shown and showcased and certain things like that. And it's like, you want that for AEW too, because it's like, the water rises all tides and everything, all boats and stuff. So it's something very much considers too.
Yeah, I agree. Christian Cage, Bryan Danielson, fantastic match. It was, you had the schmaz ending, but what a match. You talk about two guys that, there was a time when we thought we would never see either one of them in the ring, and now here they are and putting on just a Mack classic. Let me ask you, who do you think takes that TNT title off of Christian Cage? Is it Adam Copeland? Is it somebody else?
Boy, that's a great question. The momentum that Swerve Strickland had after Wrestle Dream, and I know he was in the Eliminator match with Bryan beforehand. He is somebody that that kind of makes sense to have somebody like that take it. It's very difficult to kind of choose somebody in that regard, because Christian is so good right now, and he's really helping the belt kind of almost reestablish itself in certain ways. And I think it kind of, you want it to mean something where they're not playing hot potato all the time, but to think about who should take it in a lot of, I'm trying to think it. Swerve, I believe, said this in an interview where he said it would be a good he didn't use it in the manner of like it's lesser than, but he referred it to almost like a stepping stone to the world title. And that's what you think about when it comes to the Intercontinental title with the, WWE title and certain things like that. And, any kind of secondary title, it's like, hey, the next step forward. So I think you'd want to put that on somebody that you're really wanting to go the next level with. Now, Adam Copeland taking it from Christian Cage would make sense because it further establishes the belt, because such a big name has it. So I wouldn't necessarily be against that. But then you'd have to pick somebody right to dethrone Edge out of it too, or Adam Copeland. So interesting to kind of try to consider who would be a good fit for that. there's a lot of names that I think would benefit. I would say Wardlow, but Wardlow's had it so many times that it's like,
True.
So it's very tough to consider. You want everybody to get their chance at highlighting themselves. So it's tough. Ricky Starks wouldn't be a bad one because they've kind of planted some seeds with him and Edge, or Adam Copeland. So I don't know how you would get getting a heel away from it, but that would. I'm always a fan of Ricky, so that wouldn't be a bad one, I think, too, to have him go on a lengthy run with it at some point, at the very least.
Yeah, as much as I like Adam Copeland, that feels almost a little too obvious to have him take the title. So, like a Ricky Starks, I think in order to do that, you're gonna have to probably turn him back to babyface, which, knowing Ricky as I do, having worked with him for so long here in the Austin area, Ricky seems like a natural heel. He always has been.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you do that. So then, of course, then you got to look elsewhere. You got Dynamite coming up this tomorrow night, Wednesday night, coming up from the Fort Bend Epicenter, which is a brand new building in Rosenberg, which is about southwest of Houston. It's probably about 2.5 hours from here. In fact, they just hosted a Top Rank Boxing event on ESPN. Like I said, there's a brand new building. It's on the outskirts of Houston. In fact, I was at Dustin Rhodes Wrestling Academy on Friday, and he was relishing the fact he could just drive to TV instead of having to fly. So this Wednesday night, coming up on Dynamite, you got Sting addressing the fans. Now, the last time they had this, it was basically just say, "Hey, I'm sticking around. You're not getting rid of me." I'm wondering, only because Sting lives in the Dallas area, but he is in Texas. Is this where it becomes the beginning of the end of the career of the Icon?
Tony Khan's expressed on the press conference calls how much he would love to keep Sting around for as long as Sting wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that really, and Sting has had such a great renaissance with AEW. There's been several missteps and stuff along the way with AEW, but one thing they've done right is they've done right by Sting, no doubt about it. Where it's just like, wow, he just elevated to the level that he should be portrayed at. Always made to look like superhuman in a lot of ways, against a stacked deck and things like that. And then just, him willing to do stuff and working with a younger talent like Darby, I think is not just invaluable to Darby, but really helped out Sting in a lot of ways, like reinvent himself, for lack of a better phrase. And, I hope that's not the case, but, it would make sense because I know his contract was running out here in 2023 at some point. So, you could definitely utilize that as a storyline, and maybe not necessarily the beginning of the end. Maybe this means like just you're going to see him less, maybe a little bit less. You know what I mean? And then he'll pick and choose his moments, maybe when to come back, almost to the point where it's on the level of an Undertaker.
Yeah.
So, that could be a very good scenario for both parties. Because it is, if you want it to make it feel like an event when Sting's around,
Yes.
So I would always like to see Sting keep rolling as long as he wants to. I'm in the same boat with Tony Khan on that one. But yeah, it would make sense if that's the route he wants to take. Because heck, he's like 63, 64.
Yeah, 63, 64, something like that. Yeah.
So what a run.
And I am total agreement with you and Tony. I think let Sting go as long as he wants. And, if he decides to pull back a little bit and you just, he shows up on special occasions, that's fine. Sting has always been, he's that guy, for me, going all the way back to when he was one half of the Blade Runners in Mid-South Wrestling and and then, splitting off and going to Crockett and doing, everything he did in Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA and then Impact. And Tony Khan has absolutely done right by Sting, and he deserves every bit of accolade you can throw at him. Should be in every Hall of Fame there is. I think he almost is.
Yeah.
So yeah, if he decides he wants to maybe not do as many dates, great. But yeah, I hope Sting at least sticks around as long as he wants, and he's still able to contribute and everything. We also got Kyle Fletcher from Aussie Open. He put out the challenge. He's going to face Kenny Omega. That should be a nice one. The timeless Tony Storm. And this thing has been, it is a hoot. I mean, it is fan. What she has developed with this throwback 1920s silent picture era starlet has been gold. I chuckle at it. It makes me smile. And, I mean, Tony Storm has real. I think she has found something that, at least in the near term, she can really sink her teeth in.
It's such a fun thing to play with, I would imagine, as being a wrestler, and getting that kind of creative input to be able to do that. Not only that, but RJ City is such a great compliment to her in those vignettes and everything like that, that I feel that added to, like, okay, she's very erratic and she's just off her rocker basically, and just has lost her mind. And I think it's a very, very cool gimmick. And I think it's something that, if I was Tony Khan, I would kind of embrace that, as much as you can, make that kind of stand out. You wouldn't want to, I don't think, go too off fourth wall breaking on it, but might not be too crazy to kind of lean into the almost broken Matt Hardy aspect of it too.
Yeah.
If people like to do something like that. But I also think it should be a moment for, like, Tony Khan and AEW to kind of take pause and realize, like, heck, we got a lot of athletes on the roster, and obviously we embrace that on Dynamite and, Collision. Geez, I sound like the wrestling fan where I'm saying we. But I think you got a lot of that aspect going into the play on it. But I think this Tony Khan, this timeless persona and everything like that, can give you a pause to see how much personas really can get over. And if you focus on that, the less you have to worry about, what's going on so much in the ring. And, it's kind of funny too, because the WCW talent Crowbar and everybody like that. He had the timeless. He used the persona timeless. His was different. He used black and white and a lot of different aspects coming into play that transition over that. But it's funny that it's kind of ties into that, because Crowbar is a physical therapist, and he was very mindful of protecting yourself and being safe, but also getting yourself across and staying healthy for a lengthy time. So it's like, it's kind of neat that, Tony Storm has taken almost this different mantle of it in a way, but I think it would be very cool for them to take note of what Crowbar has done for his career too, and kind of showcase, hey, focus on the persona a lot more and less on their in-ring action. You have both of those at the same time, but you can protect a lot of talent at the same time too. And I think it slows down the pace of a Dynamite or a Collision, where it's like not so quick that people forget about it so often, and make those things seem more significant too, if that makes sense too.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. One other thing they're going to do, they're going to tape it on Wednesday night to air on Rampage on Friday night. They're doing this Mexico's pound for pound champion. It's basically going to be Rocky Romero, who is the CMLL World Historic Welterweight Champion, taking on the CMLL World Historic Middleweight Champion, Mystico. And apparently they're going to give it kind of an Arena Mexico feel, using the footage and everything. And apparently this is kind of the start of a relationship between AEW and CMLL. Now, it's going to be interesting because AEW already has a relationship with AAA, And we know AAA, CMLL, they do not play together.
Nope.
So apparently you can't have, for instance, you won't see a match with Mystico and Penta because they can't work together because it's two different companies. But I mean, still having Rocky Romero and Mystico in that kind of an environment on Rampage, being taped Wednesday night there in Rosenberg, that's gonna be something to behold, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if you, to your point, if they handle it in the manner of like embracing what, Lucha Libre and that style of CMML is, I think you can distinguish yourself a little bit more too from, what WWE presents. And, it's almost like, in the WCW days when they brought in the cruiserweights and stuff like that. And you kind of had that set different element in that feel. I know presentation is already different with AEW in comparison to WWE, but it's like embrace what you can. That maybe WWE doesn't necessarily lean on as much. So I think this is a good opportunity to do that. And that you're also further perpetuating the Forbidden Door mentality that you've developed. And obviously you have that pay-per-view too that goes with it every year. And so I think that's a really great aspect. It's kind of crazy too. CMLL is also working with MLW at the same time too. And Rocky Romero happens to be he just won their middleweight title this past weekend here in Philadelphia. So it's kind of neat. Not necessarily if you're mainstream or huge like WWE, but you're getting those opportunities to bring in this extra talent and kind of showcase it. Now it's like, and balancing it with your actual product is tough to do. I think AEW needs to get a lot better at that in certain ways, but overall, this is a good thing. It's definitely a good thing to do and make yourself stand out more.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So, switch gears for go to WWE, starting with SmackDown, and we now have general managers again. So they announced Triple H comes out on SmackDown, announces that Adam Pearce has done such a fantastic job. He's going to be promoted. Now he is now the general manager of Monday Night Raw. And then he introduced Nick Aldis as the general manager of SmackDown. Give me your thoughts. And by the way, two men that have multiple times been the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Now they're the general managers. And then if you count Cody Rhodes, who was at least a guest GM for NXT, you got three former NWA World Heavyweight Champions. Give me your thoughts on Nick Aldis as the general manager of SmackDown.
I think it's a great move because it's like Nick Aldis is still like, they always say the prime age in pro wrestling is 36. I think he's only like 35, and maybe he is 36, but that's right in the thick of his prime of wrestling. So I think he fits the bill very well as like a good authority figure that you can trust and lean on and rely on. Like, and I don't think Triple H is ever going to go into the heel authority figure route, at least not for years, if they even do anything to that aspect. So I think it's more so you want somebody that looks like they can handle themselves physically, but you also have somebody that looks like they command authority too. Nick Aldis has been able to do that. He's clearly shown himself able to do that and get that across as the NWA World Champ. For his like long tenure and stuff like that. He's already dresses nice. He's got the British accent, surely helps, I'm sure. But I think he's such a great talent. I'm very happy he's on there because he does do that. And you can also always lean into him getting physical and him eventually stepping in the ring. And I think that's so often nowadays has been a lost aspect in regards to pro wrestling, is like when that color commentator or the the guy that hasn't grappled up in a while kind of takes a stand and be like, you know what, I will get in the ring against you. You can go back to that trope and stuff like that, which is always, I think, a fun thing to do. So Nick Aldis presents that. He has a history with Cody Rhodes. They still need a rubber match too, so that's always something. I know WWE doesn't like venturing outside of that realm, their own realm, but it's still a fun aspect to lean into. So I think there's plenty of possibilities with Nick Aldis. I think it's a great first start with him in there, and yes, it's he balances that out all very well. So it was a great move by Triple H. It further shows that he knows what he's doing there too.
And I agree with you that I really hope, and they've done it so well with Adam Pearce.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not get into the whole heel authority figure that's going to screw the baby faces and all. That is so worn out and tired. You know, basically have Nick Aldis do what Adam Pearce has been doing. Keep it at that. And like you said, if he has to climb in the ring, we know he can do it. And they even pointed it out on SmackDown. They pointed out they didn't mention the titles, but they mentioned that both men have had successful in-ring careers. So, you know, it's almost like they've planted the seed for if Nick Aldis, you know, if he decides he needs to get physical, yeah, he could do it. So, we also found out that Kevin Owens has been traded to SmackDown. This is the other half of what sent Jey Uso from SmackDown to Raw. I think that this opens up KO to a lot of possibilities. One of the things I thought about, and I want to get your opinion on this, because you know Roman Reigns has returned after 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, before we get to that, something I saw, and it floored me. Roman Reigns defends the title against Cody Rhodes April 2nd at WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
Since that date, Roman Reigns has and allegedly, based on everything you see, that undisputed Universal title is WWE's top title. Roman Reigns has, since April 2nd, Roman Reigns has defended that title a total of 3 times. And 2 of those were at house shows against Rey Mysterio. So, in the 6.5 months since WrestleMania, Roman Reigns has had 1 televised title defense.
It's tough.
So I had Mike Sempervive on last week from Wrestling Observer Live, and he and I talked about this. We criticized when they had Brock Lesnar as the Universal Champion because, you know, he would show up 4 times a year. Now they're doing it with Roman Reigns. Like I said, Roman Reigns shows up on SmackDown for the first time in 2 months. He hasn't done anything since SummerSlam. Should I be as bothered about that as I am? Because that just feels wrong. I mean, they're touting this 1,100-day reign. Well, it's easy to have a long reign when you only defend it once or twice.
Right. And you think about the days of Bruno and stuff like that. Well, how often did he defend that belt, you know, against all the dragons he had to slay?
Even Hulk Hogan defended it more than, and Hulk Hogan didn't defend his title that much.
No, you know, and so I understand the fact that Roman Reigns is such a compelling champion, and he's had such a historic storyline with the bloodline and everything like that, where it's you want to squeeze all the juice you can out of that. But to the point of like, hey, you know, he's got to defend the belt. Like, it's like, it feels to that, it does feel kind of wrong. Like, because he's, you know, you want to make him feel like a special attraction. And I understand he's well earned the right to not go work all the time and be on every show. And, you know, as a champion, he shouldn't have to do that either, because it makes it feel more significant when he's not there. But have him show up and defend the belt, even if it's just, you know, a one-off kind of thing where he's there. he's got to put the belt on the line every 30 days to that aspect. That's something I've always appreciated in wrestling and stuff. And it makes the title mean more. It makes his reign seem more significant. Not that it isn't in this situation, but it definitely feels it's getting a little dent in the armor almost, if you will, from this aspect of it not being defended as much. There's that caveat that's kind of there. And you'd like to see Roman Reigns have this historic run with the track record and resume behind it. So yeah, they can definitely do a little bit more of a better balance, I feel, with it. And if that was the case where like, hey, he's only showing up this many times, maybe it's just tough because you have that storyline for WrestleMania and all these compelling elements, but he's got to defend the belt.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's the thing. I've been saying almost since right after SummerSlam, I've been saying that the Bloodline storyline, I think, has finally jumped the shark. Mm-hmm. You have, so after everything that happened with Jimmy and Jay, and they were getting split away from the Bloodline and everything, and then Jay challenges Roman at SummerSlam, and then Jimmy interferes because he doesn't want Jay to turn into Roman, and now Jimmy's trying to get back in the Bloodline, which makes no sense whatsoever. It's to the point, and between that and Roman having this very part-time schedule, it looks like, based on Friday night, looks like they're setting him up for a new program with LA Knight. You had the face off, whatever, at the beginning of the show, and then Roman comes down after LA Knight, beats Solo Sikoa, and he spears LA Knight. It feels like that's likely your Universal title match for Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia. So I'm going through, I'm kind of going through the calendar. I'm still of the mindset. You got to do Cody versus Roman at WrestleMania in Philadelphia. Got to do that. And by God, take the title off of Roman. Give it to Cody.
Gotta happen.
That upset me in Los Angeles.
I know. Who?
So I'm thinking, okay, now you bring Kevin Owens to SmackDown. Hmm? What's to stop him from running that back again, say at Royal Rumble? It feels like, so you're going to have Roman LA Knight at Crown Jewel. Feels like you might do a Bloodline War Games match at Survivor Series. Maybe Bloodline against some amalgamation of Cody, Jay, Sammy, and somebody else. Maybe KO. I'm thinking KO against Roman at Royal Rumble. And then, as I said, Philadelphia, Roman and Cody. And this time you got to take the title off, because if you don't do it now, in my mind, it diminishes the title. So now it's kind of like, and I think you're going to have fans starting to check out. It's kind of like, just let me know when Roman loses the title. They're not going to take the bait anymore. So, give me your thoughts on how you see Roman as Universal Champion over the next 6 months.
I think you laid out a pretty solid framework for how it could probably transpire. I think, you have him feud with LA Knight. That elevates LA Knight. You don't necessarily have to put the title on LA Knight right now. Like, teasing him in that program is very much good enough for at this juncture to have him happen. I think you could almost do a Survivor Series where he's, kind of leading a team against Roman Reigns in the Bloodline. And you could have him take that mantle and further that. But then, to your point, it's like Kevin Owens has such a history with Roman Reigns and has gotten the better of him on several occasions. So he would make perfect sense to go up against that. And even if fans know that he's not going to win the title, you could still make a compelling story out of all that and have that kind of transpire in a good way for Kevin, and just have Roman make a solid title defense on his journey against Cody. I know the element of The Rock is always in play, after the tease he made on McAfee. And people will be like, well, geez, what's going to happen with Cody and stuff like that? I would almost feel like that they could have him fight The Rock on night 1 and then Cody on night 2. But that aspect of it is you almost have to have Cody earn that shot on night 1. So it's like balance out the scales. If Roman's fighting on night 1, Cody should fight on night 1 as well. And then you can have those two culminate with one another, almost like a mini tournament that you could kind of do. And then, so you have the Roman beat The Rock, boom, you got a significant story and match there. And then you close it out with Cody finally finishing the story. And so I think that would be pretty compelling. That's if you get The Rock mixed in, obviously.
Right.
But,
and I'll be honest, I'm not holding my breath on The Rock.
Right.
I really don't think let's be honest. We know him and John Cena they were both there because actors are on strike and the writers are on strike.
Yes.
We got the writer's strike over with. They're working on the actor's strike. So my guess is The Rock is going to be busy. And I wouldn't even, begin to give thought to The Rock showing up at WrestleMania. For that matter, I don't think John Cena will be there either. I think it's going to be, they'll be busy doing whatever project, whatever movie they're doing. So, I get what you're saying about kind of like having a mini tournament. And New Japan has done this last, a couple years with Wrestle Kingdom, where you'll have whoever has the briefcase from the G1 Classic, they get challenged, and then the winner of that match will challenge the IWGP champion. So, but like I said, I don't think The Rock's going to be there, and I'm hoping that WWE will do enough to kind of let people know he's not going to be there. Kind of one of those out of sight, out of mind things. So
I think that's a fair point too, because you look at what was exactly going on when Rock made that announcement or made that tease, like, hey, I'm up for Philly. Like, the company just merged around that time.
Yeah.
And like, you want as much eyes on that product as you make this huge historic venture for WWE and for UFC and for TKO Holdings. So it's like, get eyes on it. Pat McAfee's there. The Rock shows up on SmackDown. You're getting new TV deal got announced on SmackDown, for USA Network. So you wanted to create a lot of that buzz. So maybe that's all that they were trying to do there. And so that was kind of it. And then, yeah. And I love The Rock. I would think it'd be super compelling if him and Cody were both in contention for that title, because you're just, what is going to happen here? But you don't necessarily need The Rock to at WrestleMania 40. You don't. It's like Cody has been an ultimate babyface that has went above and beyond that kind of identity of like what people like about a classic babyface. It hasn't been shown, and for years people haven't liked that since Hulk Hogan in '91, almost, if you really consider it. So he's doing such a great job at it. Cody deserves to finish the story too. I'm with you, Stu.
I agree. Well, and one of the things that really touched me was, you think about the end of Cody's AEW run where, he'd come out, he'd take off the weight belt and toss it to the crowd. And there was one night where they tossed it back.
Yeah.
Then, fast forward to, I think it was this past Friday night, coming down, he, does his interests. He stops, takes his weight belt off, walks over to this young man who I think there may be some developmental issues, and presented the belt to him. And this young man cried. I mean, he was so moved, and I gave him a hug. And it just, knowing Cody and Dustin like I do, it doesn't surprise me that they do that, but that was such a cool moment. It
Yeah.
really was. And you know, it makes you just respect Cody all the more for what he is doing right now. And I just, it was one of those really, really nice moments to witness on TV. So
Truly a generational talent in the ways that he not only is establishing that likable baby face, but he's authentic and he's people can relate to that. And he also is somebody very much on the same parallel of The Rock, where they have such a respect and love for the business that it's never going to leave them. It's part of who they are. And so it's like Cody is there. Roman Reigns has been just a fantastic heel through this whole thing. It's very compelling story when I'm with you that the bloodline overall kind of jumped the shark in a lot of ways. But I feel like you got it, those two ultimate good versus evil happening here, and it should pay off at WrestleMania 40 on night 2. So
yeah,
I'm with you, Stu. With you.
Logan Paul had his fight against Dylan Dennis, got the win via disqualification because Dylan Dennis tried to apply a guillotine to him. So, and in the post fight interview with Ariel Helwani, he calls out Rey Mysterio, wants a shot at the U.S. title, and Rey Mysterio said, "Hey, come find me." I am not a fan of Logan Paul, quite honestly. I get he's talented. He's got the skills. He can put on a great match. But you don't take the title off of Ray and put it on Logan, do you?
Stu, you're gonna hate me after this. I think they should. I think, because Ray's pretty Teflon. Now, I think let me say, so I'll start with this. I'll start with like Logan Paul. You get that United States title on Logan Paul, he'll carry it around like Tyrus almost did with the NWA title and it'll get so many eyes on it and it'll elevate your product. And he doesn't necessarily have to win, clean against Rey Mysterio. Like, you can definitely have him use some chicanery and stuff like that to get. And then for another potential candidate to maybe go up against Roman Reigns on his journey towards Cody could be Rey Mysterio. And like, you have that kind of elevation of like, hey, Rey Mysterio, could he get another shot here and go up against Roman Reigns? And it just adds another notch on the Roman Reigns belt ultimately. But you also elevate Rey Mysterio back to the main event picture in a lot of ways too, where, he's a Hall of Famer. He can still go. And he's such a good, likable babyface. And if he's such a likable babyface, he's on that same level of Cody. If he loses to Roman Reigns, that adds further to Cody being that ultimate babyface to finally take out Roman. So
yeah,
I think you can have your cake and eat it too in certain ways when it says like, get Logan Paul that belt, have him travel around with it, show it up on his podcast or drink Prime with it or whatever, and then have Rey Mysterio go on a main event storyline on the road to WrestleMania.
And I get that and that makes total sense. I just
I get it. I get it. The thing is, like, he's not really likable.
No.
He's also of this generation of like YouTube kind of thing that's like, that immediate, the younger fan base is super into, and that we're not that, that's just a new whole realm of genre and entertainment. Like, doesn't really connect with us. So it's just like, oh God, really? Like, this guy that doesn't really do that much. What's he do? He's on YouTube, okay, and stuff like. So it's just like, where does that come in? WWE wants to get that younger fan base. So from the business aspect, I certainly understand what they want to do and stuff like that. Now, he's a great wrestler, and he's definitely can lean into the unlikable aspect of himself.
That's true. That's true. Monday Night Raw. So Cody and Jay lose the tag titles to Finn and Damian again. This time thanks to Jimmy Uso, because Jimmy Uso, for some unknown reason, trying to get back in the bloodline. they have had this kind of on again, off again thing about dissension in Judgment Day. And it felt like this was going to be like, this was the night where Cody and Jay would be successful, and it would push Damian Priest to split from the bloodline. But no, they decided to go with giving the belts back. I guess at least at the moment, all is well in the excuse me, not bloodline, the Judgment Day. I get that why they put the belts on Cody and Jay in the first place. I kind of wish they had left them on them for a little longer. Just give me your thoughts on Judgment Day with a bunch of belts again.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, if they made the move to have Cody and Jay win those titles, then keep it on them. I never like hot potato with titles. There's certain rare instances that maybe it makes sense and stuff like that, but I ultimately don't like it. I think it would have been okay if they kept the titles on Judgment Day initially, but if you have them lose it and not get it back, because it diminishes the whole aspect of it all. And I'm with you too on the idea of like, hey, the teasing Judgment Day and friction in the Judgment Day. I really don't think they should keep going back to that well, like where, hey, things are fine, now things aren't. Things are fine, now things aren't. I would only do that when you're really going to break them up and it's going to make sense, because, I get it. You're making how many hours of television a week and you have to tell certain stories. But I think I just focus on the Horsemen. Like, there was never really a whole lot of dissension that showed throughout the Horsemen. They were always a solid heel faction or whatever they were going for. So it's like there's never, they didn't push and pull back. And so with faction, and like you look at how they did it with, so many factions over the course of WWE these past years. It's just like, nah, just make them seem strong for a while, for like a year and a half or something. And then if you ultimately want to scoot Damian Priest out of there, who's like definitely on the trajectory for a huge singles run, then that's when you do it. But yeah, I think overall, I don't know, it kind of adds to the aspect of like, yeah, the bloodline story is pretty ran its course.
Yeah. Speaking of Judgment Day, Rhea Ripley, they had this, it was her and I forget who she was up against. It ended up being all women coming out. And so now they have said at Crown Jewel, it's going to be a fatal 5-way for the women's world title. Rhea Ripley, Nia Jax, Raquel Rodriguez, Zoe Starks, and Shayna Baszler. It started out with Rhea and Shayna.
That's right.
And it ended up now all 5 are going to compete in Saudi Arabia. I've heard at least a couple whispers saying, okay, maybe this is the time they take that title off of Rhea. And if they do, who wins it? And then what happens to Rhea?
See, that's a great point. Like, I think with the introduction of the new belts, you have the WWE women's title and then you have the women's world title. I think it would really behoove WWE to keep it on Rhea, who's such a talent and such the next major star and is very much on that route of being that. So I would keep it on Rhea. Like, and I'm not a fan of the 5-way matches or certain aspects like that. I get like you want to highlight, but I think singles matches really mean more. Even if you ran it back with like a Rhea Ripley and a Shayna Baszler at Crown Jewel, that's totally fine. Because I think what WWE and Triple H is certainly making note of that is all the great women that they have on that roster. And so you have a Nia Jax, you have a Natalya, you have, Bianca Belair, you have Becky Lynch, you have Charlotte in the mix. Then you have this impending star and Jade Cargill coming into the mix too. So it's like the more you can highlight those people just singularly, I think would just do the company very much more than what it is than having a hodgepodge of them competing for the belt. Even if Rhea comes on top, it almost feels like a blah kind of aspect to it all. It's a forgettable story element in the grand scheme of what Rhea's doing, and maybe for the women's division in general too. But I mean, it's like they have such talent. I think they're leaning into the right direction overall with the women's division, though, in WWE.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with you. I wouldn't take the title off of Rhea yet. I think I might save that until WrestleMania.
Yeah,
And then I don't know if you do it if you decide to put the rocket on Jade Cargill, or you have somebody else in mind, fine. You mentioned Becky Lynch. She is still the NXT Women's Champion. Apparently, she's got the contenders lining up. She's going to face Indy Hartwell next week on Raw for the NXT title. You got Xia Li wanting a shot. Not to mention everybody that's in NXT, they want a shot. Even Jade Cargill like that belt. It feels like Becky Lynch is having a blast as the NXT Women's Champion. She's just relishing in it as long as she can.
it's the best of both worlds because you're not only elevating the NXT product by having her on, but you're kind of giving Becky a renaissance too. Not that she necessarily needed it, but it's kind of cool to see her in this different environment that you have these other stars you're looking to elevate to her level on the main roster. So putting her in NXT and having her work with younger talent and cultivating these early starts, and I'm sure like a lot of them are learning from her behind the scenes too. So it's just like so much of that comes into play, and she elevates the title, she elevates the brand, she elevates herself, and she elevates the talent that she works with. So it's great. It's awesome to see. I love really what they're doing overall with NXT, and I think it's such a savvy business move to plug into those main roster stars onto that product, because I think it was Nick Khan said a while ago he's not against making that a third brand. It really seems like that's what they're doing with NXT, and it not just having it be that developmental brand, but it's potential for just so much more and a fresh look in comparison to Raw and SmackDown. So I like it, Stu. I like it a lot. Becky's obviously a star, and I think one of the best going still.
Yeah, in fact, I think she had a momentary run-in with Rhea Ripley, and she walks away going, Becky 2 belts. She kind of like that sound again.
Yeah, right.
Maybe going after the women's world title. So, but yeah, and in fact, I've got NXT on the television right now, and Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria having their war of words right now. So Becky Lynch is, like I said, she's just having so much fun with that. So he is Dominic DeAngelo. You can catch him on One of a Kind podcast with Rob Van Dam. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. Dominic, I appreciate the time, man. I always enjoyed chatting with you. All the best to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Dude, it's been wonderful. It's always wonderful to chat with you. You're one of the best guys in the business, and I'm happy to call you a colleague. So thank you so much for having me, Stu.